Smile with Daniel.
Listen, wonder, and learn.
Mom, I heard someone talking about Ebola at school today, and everyone just kind of went quiet. Why does that word scare people so much?
Daniel, that is such a good question. Because the answer is more complicated than most people think.
So, is it just because it kills people?
That is part of it. But here is the thing. Lots of diseases kill people. Measles kills hundreds of thousands of people every single year. Tuberculosis kills over 1 million. Yet those names usually don't make a room go quiet the way Ebola does.
So, it is not just about how many people die.
It is about how it feels. What people imagine when they hear it. And a lot of what people imagine is not quite accurate.
Okay, so what is Ebola actually?
So, Ebola is a virus. It was first identified in 1976 near the Ebola River in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when doctors first saw it, they had never seen anything like it.
What made it so different, Mom?
It caused a very severe illness, very quickly. High fever, severe pain, and in the worst cases, it could kill a very high percentage of people it infected. In some early outbreaks, more than half the people who caught it did not survive.
More than half.
Which is why it frightened doctors immediately. Most viruses that spread widely are less deadly. Most viruses that are very deadly don't spread easily. Ebola was deadly, and nobody knew yet how contagious it was.
I am just wondering, how contagious is it?
This is the part that surprises most people. Ebola spreads through direct contact with the blood or bodily fluids of someone who is already very sick. It does not spread through the air. You cannot catch it by being in the same room as someone.
Wait, so it does not spread like a cold or flu?
Not like a cold. Not like flu. Not like measles. Measles can linger in the air for up to 2 hours after an infected person leaves a room. Ebola requires direct contact with infectious bodily fluids.
So something that kills more than half the people it infects is actually harder to catch than the common cold.
Exactly. And that matters enormously for understanding why the biggest outbreak happened the way it did.
What was the biggest outbreak?
West Africa, 2014 to 2016. It started quietly, a small cluster of cases in the forests of Guinea at the end of 2013. By the time it was identified as Ebola in March 2014, it had already spread to neighboring countries.
Why did it spread so fast this time?
3 things happened at once. First, Ebola had never reached West Africa before. Doctors there had never seen it. The early symptoms, fever, headache, weakness, look like many other diseases that are common in the region, so there was a delay in recognizing what was happening.
By which time it had already spread.
The second thing, the outbreak reached cities, Previous Ebola outbreaks had mostly stayed in rural areas, where they were contained more quickly. But this one reached Monrovia, Freetown, Conakry, large, densely populated cities with healthcare systems that were already stretched very thin.
So the cities made it worse.
And the third thing? Something that is harder to talk about, but really important to understand. In parts of West Africa, traditional burial practices involve washing and touching the body of someone who has died. It is a way of showing love and respect. But someone who has died of Ebola is still highly infectious.
Oh. So the funerals were spreading it.
Without anyone knowing. Without anyone meaning to. People were honoring someone they loved and putting themselves at risk without realizing it. And when outsiders came in and said, "You cannot touch the body," it felt like an attack on something sacred.
So they were not being careless. They were doing what they had always done. What felt right.
Exactly. And this is where the story becomes about more than just the virus. Stopping Ebola required science, but it also required trust. Communities had to understand why the old practices were dangerous in this specific situation, and health workers had to earn that trust before people would listen.
Did they manage it?
It took time and enormous courage. Local doctors and nurses stayed and worked when they could have left. Community health workers went door to door, tracing who had been in contact with who. People changed burial practices that had existed for generations, not because they were told to by outsiders, but because they came to understand the danger.
That must have been so hard.
One of the hardest things a community can be asked to do. To change how you say goodbye to someone you love. Because of a virus you cannot see.
And what about the rest of the world? Was everyone in danger?
This is where fear ran ahead of the facts. During the 2014 outbreak, there were cases in the United States and in Spain, but because Ebola requires direct contact to spread, those cases were contained relatively quickly. The nurses who treated patients in Texas and Spain became infected. They recovered.
So it did not spread widely outside of West Africa.
It did not. Because the same thing that makes it terrifying, its severity, also works against it spreading widely. People who are very sick with Ebola are not out moving around and infecting others. They are in bed or in hospital. The virus that kills quickly has less time to spread.
So the deadliness is almost a limit on itself.
That is a really sophisticated way to think about it. And yes, that is part of the epidemiology. The biology of the virus works against wide global spread.
Did the world eventually get better at responding?
It had to. The 2014 outbreak showed the world how unprepared it was. Healthcare systems in West Africa were overwhelmed. International response was too slow at first. Over 11,000 people died before the outbreak was finally declared over in 2016.
11,000 people.
11,000 people. And the world paid attention. New international agreements were made about how to respond faster. Researchers who had been working on Ebola vaccines for years finally got the funding and urgency they needed. And in 2019, the first Ebola vaccine was formally approved.
There is a vaccine now?
There is a vaccine now. It did not exist during the worst of the 2014 outbreak. The people who died in those years died without that protection being available. The vaccine exists today partly because of what happened to them.
So, in a way, the people who died made the world safer for others.
The doctors who stayed, the nurses who kept working, the community health workers who went door to door, the families who changed how they said goodbye. Yes, they made the world safer.
So, Ebola terrified the world, not just because it was deadly, but because it was unknown and new. And it exposed how unprepared the world was.
And left the world better prepared than it was before. So, Daniel, what is one thing you are taking with you today?
Let's see. Ebola is deadly, but it is actually harder to catch than a cold or flu because it only spreads through direct contact. The 2014 outbreak was so big partly because of delayed recognition, overwhelmed healthcare systems, and the way traditional burial practices spread the virus without anyone knowing. And, oh yeah, the first Ebola vaccine only existed because of what that outbreak forced the world to do.
Fear can spread faster than facts, but so can courage.
Fear can spread faster than facts, but so can courage.
Please remember that one.